Welcome, my friends, to Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat, the podcast that never ends, where we gather our clan and talk about the peace and love in our lives, the difficulties along the journey, and how we rise up from them. We will experience a little thing I call Kluberty together, and by the end of the show, we're going to find our sweet spot. I'm Uncle Dave, and our transformation starts right here. Hey now, how are you doing? I want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. And today's guest is going to be a lawyer extraordinaire, but we're not going to talk about law. We're actually going to talk about being a real person and really what we do in that living part of life. So I'd love to introduce my friend Carl. Carl, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, David. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, no. So Carl and I actually met with the Institute of Wellbeing in Law, and it was really a combination. We've had a couple of talks, and what got you to that point, Carl? Really to be mental wellness, and that's really not a topic that they generally talk about in the law.
Yeah. So I practiced law for a lot of years, 30 plus, and I decided to pivot after a very rewarding career. And I founded a company last May, and it's focusing on attorney wellness, health, well-being, because I found that helped me stay resilient throughout what can be a very bruising profession. I was on the litigation side of the house, and it's a very adversarial system, and that can wear down people. So I just found embedding a fitness component in my daily and weekly routine helped me handle what came at me rather quickly. How
so? Since I know the physical piece aspect is really important to you.
Yeah, it gave me, I would, and still do, I work out in the morning, and that kind of is a brain dump, and it would allow me and give me great clarity of thought. But it also, I just got a tremendous boost, energy boost, and again, the clarity of thought. So I would go into work in better shape, both literally and metaphorically. I would just have a clearer mind to handle what came at me. We would always have clients that were in crisis. You might be helping colleagues. You have to respond to the court. So you're juggling a lot of balls. And it just helped me to do that. And bottom line is I would show up better. I would show up as a better person and a better colleague and a better lawyer and a better friend.
Yeah, no, I think that's the really important part is using your resources to help manage that mental wellness. And that's the most important part is finding what resources work well for you and utilizing those all the time.
Without a doubt. Again, I would find, and I do find a lot of solace in when I work out, and again, the clarity of thought. I work things out, and then I show up. I've got better ideas, and I'm usually have a better disposition.
Sure, yeah, it's one of those things about moving the energy. We all get into that point when sometimes life gets to us, and if we don't move the energy in the proper ways to be more effective for ourselves, then it does really clogs up. We become damned, as the metaphor goes. How do you unblock yourself? When you're doing all the exercise, what specifically do you do to help you work through the challenges?
Well, I think when we're alone with our thoughts, many times lying in bed, you're thinking about issues, problems, and at times they seem insurmountable for whatever reason. You may have this feeling like you're the only person out there that's facing this type of issue. And when the sun rises and, you're vertical and I get my heartbeat going, it allows me to take a step back and say, okay, I can handle this, and here's how I'm going to handle it. It allows me reflection. I'm able to reflect. And when I reflect, I can slow the train down and pause and come up with the next step, a best next step. So it's purposeful, it's intentional, and it's really designed to kind of slow the train down.
Yeah, well, that's the really important part, and I say that all the time when I about meditation and resetting your brain is that you can think quicker once you start reacting slower. You know,
Without a doubt, I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, I went to an appointment, and when I came out, my car wouldn't start. I've had some issues. It's with the car. I called AAA, and they said we'll be there within the next 4 hours. They ended up showing up after 2. The reason I raised that is I don't think a couple years ago I would have handled that as well as I did yesterday. I was by my car and I said, okay, I can deal with this. You know, there are people out there with far worse problems than a car that won't start. And I've got AAA. They said they're on their way, and that's that. And it was a very nice day. And I just basically stood by my car and kind of observed life for 2 hours. I had nothing to read, and I purposefully avoided getting on my iPhone. And I just kind of chilled out. And that, I'm not sure I would have been there a couple of years ago with the hustle and bustle of the practice and, everybody clamoring to get a piece of you. So it was very, very insightful that I was able to kind of downshift yesterday and deal with that, which again is not a big issue, but the 2 hours went fast, believe it or not.
yeah, that's the incredible part. There's the old saying, the old Buddha saying that if you can't meditate for 20 minutes, you need to meditate for 2 hours. And people used to ask me, do you meditate? And I was like, I can't sit for that long. And now I can. Part of that is liking yourself, at least for me, was the worst person I could have been with was me and sitting with myself. Now, I don't mind. My daughter had a job, and she would you have to pick me up at time X. And, sometimes she'd be late, sometimes she wouldn't be because of the nature of the job. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, it's all okay. I just found things to do. I sat with myself, and that's a really powerful part of learning to sit with yourself and being comfortable sitting with yourself.
Without a doubt. And there's a quote I read in a book that said, I'm never more lonely than when I'm not alone, which always resonated with me because I'm okay being alone. And when I'm alone, I am not lonely because I'm just flat out okay with it. I can get things in line and think of next steps and again downshift, which is a blessing, frankly.
Well, having that ability to do that's the really powerful part, right? Well, the power that we want to share with everybody else has to start within ourselves, and if it doesn't come from within ourselves, then that's the biggest challenge. I've learned, again, from firsthand experience, that's how I see it. And it feels so much easier and it flows so much better once I've learned that power for myself.
Yeah. And I would try to mentor younger lawyers at my firm and help them with perspective. I did not go into either family law or criminal law, and that was by design. I did some corporate stuff, among other things. And there aren't a lot of the phrase I use is code reds. There aren't a lot of code reds in corporate law. Family law, you have some crises. Criminal law, you have some crises. But the code reds really don't exist in corporate law. And I would try to tell the young lawyers, just settle down. We've got deadlines, but we can deal with them. Somebody's liberty is not at stake. The custody of a child is not at stake. They're not trying to institutionalize this person. This is a corporate dispute, and we can deal with it. So that was always you try to give off. You try to de-escalate, not escalate. And I would try to de-escalate tension and emotion amongst the younger lawyers in the firm.
Now, I'm going to assume, at least using my experiences, that wasn't always your focus in life. What was it?
Not always.
Okay, yeah.
No.
So how did you get here? So, I talk about Phoenix moments. What was maybe the aha moment? It doesn't have to be a Phoenix out of the ashes moment. But what's some of the things that have led you to this mind shift?
It's been 2014 was a kind of a pivotal year in my life, and I'll be very candid with you. It was a year of great loss. I had a brother-in-law that simply disappeared out in Arizona. He, to date, has never been found. The week that the search for him was underway, David, was also the week my mother was dying of cancer. So though I had those two things going on simultaneously, and I had to kind of silo those things to deal with each one. So my mother did pass away. They never found my brother-in-law. When we had the wake for my mother, everybody came through the line, friends and family asking, about my brother-in-law. Did you have any word on my brother-in-law? And then mourning the loss of my mom. And my wife commented that when we got home that evening, I felt like we were at two wakes, and it really felt that way. Later in that year, I found out that I was not to run anymore, and running was my saving grace. So I call it kind of the trifecta of loss that year, 2014. And it was one of those, okay, so my mother's gone, my brother-in-law disappeared, I can't run anymore. What do I do here? How do I would be able to handle these losses by running. So I kind of had to figure things out and make a little something out of nothing. And I did that by kind of getting on the bike and learning to fly. Instead of running, I learned to fly on the bike. And that seemed to settle things down and put some things in perspective. And when my brother-in-law disappeared, he was 57. And that was the age that I was last year when I left the law firm. So there was some symmetry there. He was a dynamite guy. And I thought, well, let me try to do something at the age of 57 going forward that my brother-in-law didn't have the opportunity to do.
Mm. Well, that's really powerful. Unfortunately, I've thought about similar things recently as I've experienced some things. But it sounds like that big year has been changing, and you created. You're a coach, so I'd love to hear about the program that you created, the Ficks program, and what that means.
Yeah, so it's basically a program that can apply not only to fitness and wellness, but I think life. And it's an acronym for my last name. The F is to formulate a goal. The I is to institute a plan. The C is to carry through with that plan. The K is, I say, kick a little butt. There aren't a lot of good K words out there, knight in shining armor. But so I opted for just kick a little butt, meaning have some fun. And then the S is to savor, reflect, and reassess. And I think and so that's a program, I'll ask a client, what do you want to do? Do you want to run the New York City Marathon, or do you just want to walk around Central Park? So there's your goal. Okay. If you want to walk around Central Park, you want 2 loops, then we're going to come up with a plan to get you those 2 loops around Central Park. Then we're going to carry through with it, actually do it. And then the K is kick a little butt, have fun, just enjoy it, because it should be a joyful experience. And then the S is to savor it and reflect and reassess. And the savor comes from really just enjoying what you've accomplished, because I found in the practice of law, you do one thing and then you immediately move on to the next. And there was no time, even if you conducted a good deposition or won a trial, the next day, boom, you'd be in the mix again. And that was a distant memory. There wasn't a lot of savoring. So the savor is just, hey, sit back and enjoy what you just accomplished. reflect on it, and could you have done something differently? Could you have done something better? Do you want to do something differently? So that's the system distilled into its simplest terms, and it's a riff on my last name.
Yeah, but it really is as simple as it is, that you could do that in everything. And that's why I want to talk about it, is because it doesn't have to be about work, life. You could apply that type of thinking to everything that you do, because we don't walk around random, and we all have goals, right? Even if you're just going shopping, that's your goal, and you need to have a plan. You don't just walk in the supermarket random, right? I know, right. Me, at least. I walk, all right, I know my exact path I need to go to accomplish what I want to do. And, and we should, and I love the end about the savoring. We need to be add gratitude in our life and reflect and reassess. And, those are big R words. But it really is important to do that, because when you're walking up a mountain, you need to look back to see where you've come from. As you're going through goals and things like that.
Without a doubt. And, I'll share an anecdote. I did a charity bike ride for a cancer center in New Haven, Connecticut, called the Closer to Free Ride. And it's Smilo Cancer Center. And the first year I did it, I was really unfamiliar with the start. And what the start is the so-called Smilo Salute. So the ride starts at Yale Bowl, goes about 2 miles to the Smilo Cancer Center, where the riders are met, David, by the cancer patients and their caregivers who are thanking the riders for doing what they're doing. Absolutely floored me. So we leave Yale Bowl. We have a police escort, full lights and siren. We pull in front of the cancer center, and here are these cancer patients with their caregivers thanking the riders. And it was an incredible moment. And I stopped. I took a selfie with a patient. We hugged it out, and after that ride, after that experience, I felt like I had a jetpack on my back. But that was, stopping to savor this moment that we were mutually, that we were giving to the patient, but the patient was giving so much to us, the riders. That was just a seriously cool moment. And it kind of caught me. I wasn't blindsided, but I didn't fully appreciate that piece of the ride. I thought, okay, I'll just get on my bike and ride 100 miles, whatever it is, raise money, and then go home. Well, no, it was so much more than that.
Yeah, that's the really magical part, is by savoring the moment, being more present in our current life. You get to see so many different things that you might not have thought of, as you're a good-natured person. And, I'd love to hear about some of the other charities that I know you support. You're a very giving person. That, it's more, that's why I always say it's more than just giving $1. You want to give $1, awesome. I know all the organizations want to do that, but it's that showing up piece. And especially when you can interact with people like that, that's what's really becomes that much more powerful. So, I'd love to share some of that.
Yeah, I'll start with the general statement of I'm a big believer in sweat equity. It is easy to stroke a check if you have that ability. Donations are helpful, but it's the sweat equity that is as meaningful. So I support, and I'm on the board of 2 charities. One is the Ryan Martin Foundation. Ryan Martin is an incredible guy. He was a professional wheelchair basketball player in Europe. And he now has a foundation where he helps youth and adult athletes with disabilities live independent and passionate lives. And we work on employment opportunities, accessibility, and the like. And he's just a dynamite guy, and what he's doing is really incredible, and he's changing lives. I'm also on the board of the Fund for Greater Hartford, which is a foundation dedicated to improving the lives of children and families in the Greater Hartford area, academic and social success, but really focused on literacy. So those are 2 of the charities that I'm very involved in. I like to support veteran groups as well. There are a lot of veterans in my family. I did not serve, but both my father and my father-in-law were in World War II. I had a nephew that served in Iraq. So veteran causes are very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, as
So,
mine as well. Yeah, we've
yeah.
had a conversation about that, and I, just want to thank all veterans, and it's really one of those things that you think about, especially for those of us who have not served, but now there's so many people who have served, and you're like, how their lives are different, and how our lives are different when you hear those stories and you connect with those people. It's again being in that present moment.
Oh, without a doubt. And two thoughts on this that I would share. One is, litigation, as I said, is very adversarial, and I will candidly tell you, I'm almost 100% sure during my entire career, I never once used a war metaphor to describe litigation because I didn't think it was appropriate. I did not have the credibility to do that, having never served. Lawyers will throw out war metaphors with regularity, and I never bought into that because it just wasn't. I didn't think it was proper. Another thing, a dynamite thing I was part of was the Veterans History Project, where it's a Library of Congress initiative where they're capturing the stories of veterans. And I sat with my father-in-law. At the time, my father had already passed away, but we were able to memorialize his service through letters and photographs. My father-in-law was actually interviewed. And the interview is captured, and it's in the Library of Congress. And he's describing his experience in World War II. He was in the Battle of Luzon. But my jaw was on the ground listening to this. And he was very matter-of-factly talking about it. But, so many World War II veterans are passing away. I don't know the percentage. It's very low, those that are still alive. I mean, sure. The war ended in 1945. So do the math. But it was so very gratifying to be a part of actually capturing history. And I put that together, and boy, did it bring me great joy. And now, his grandchildren have a nice CD with his war stories. And it was kind of neat to capture.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you can give that. Not only, and that's one of those gifts that keeps on giving, really, in a lot of ways. And that's why getting those memories down are so important, because not only did your wife get to share that about her dad, you might hear that somebody had gone to war and some stories, and most veterans won't talk about what they did or what they experienced. It was very private. But then you got a little bit of that sharing that not only will get shared to your children, but it'll get passed down, if and when your children have children and so on.
Yeah. Which
is so important.
And I find too, and I think, we're kindred souls in this respect, that, the more you give, the more you get. And that closer to free ride experience I just explained to you, that the more you give, the more you get. And I got so much out of that. And there are incredible gifts that you can give others that, and I'll give you another, for instance, I have a bunch of nephews, but one of them was a runner in high school. And when he turned 16, I said to him, we're going to run 16 miles. We're going to run 1 mile for every year you've been alive. And he is now a 25 or 26-year-old guy. He still talks about that run. We went out and ran 16 miles, just me and him. And it was just my gift to him. He was a short distance runner. I was a longer distance runner, and we talked about running and other things. And I gave him a few tips, and he gave me a few tips. But that's something that can never be taken away from my nephew or me. That time we went out and did 16 miles for his 16th birthday. So there's a lot of room for creativity on gifts. And again, I was gifting him my time and perhaps my experience, but I got a lot more out of it than I think I put into it.
Yeah, well, that's the magic part is showing up and giving yourself that opportunity to see the gift that you're giving, right? When we're giving, but also to receive a gift. So that's the magic part. And I've learned that also. There's times that you just feel like, okay, I'm going to give, and you don't know what's going to happen. That's the magic part about showing up and doing things. We'll be back in a moment.
This is John
and Mark Cronin from
John's Crazy Socks. And we're interrupting to say we hope you're enjoying this episode, but please make sure to check out our show, the Spreading Happiness Podcast, another great show produced by Launchpad 516 Studios. New episodes are available every week on all your favorite podcast platforms. Join us on our new podcast as we continue our mission, spreading happiness.
Thank you, folks. You're listening to Peace, Love, and Bring It Back with me, Uncle Dave Shemetsky. What's one of the lessons that you've learned, obviously by showing up, that has really changed your life?
I've learned. I learned a lot along the way. I learned. I went to college. I was 17. And I didn't handle that well, in all candor. I couldn't handle the time. My time management skills were very poor. I was playing some sports. I was partying. I wasn't really focused. And I kind of looked back. It was after a couple of years, I thought, well, I'm being very disingenuous. I'm being unfair to my family, who at great sacrifice had me in college. My father, who I'd mentioned, never went to college. At that time, my mother had not gone to college. She, which is a cool story, later got her degree at the age of 78 years old.
Wow.
But when I was in college, both my mother and father had not gone to college. So I kind of snapped out of it. And I thought, wow, I'm being really disingenuous. I later learned my father was working 2 jobs to help pay for the tuition. And I was just being a bum, for lack of a better phrase. And I kind of grew up and figured things out and got my act together. And by doing that, I was able to get into law school and kind of get on the right track. So I was in that, and I realized this is not a sustainable situation. So I need to fix it.
Well, that's really good. And that's part of that is that self-awareness. And it's sort of like, you brought a bat to yourself by knowing that this was not sustainable, that the path that you were on was not really the path you needed to be on, because the picture is bigger than just you. Do you have another? Go ahead.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Do you have any other, I talk about bringing the bat, which, non-violent, but, those other changes in life when you knew you were in a situation and you needed to create those boundaries, created those non-negotiables to change. Have you experienced any of that?
Sure. So in 2013, I left the law for a bit, and I went to work for a foundation. And I did what I could do at the foundation, and then some issues came up where I didn't think something was being handled correctly. We brought in somebody from the outside who confirmed that my position on things. And when the folks in charge didn't want to address it, I said, thank you very much. It's time for me to move on. So I didn't want to be a part of that. My father, again, I talk about my dad a lot, but he said, you're measured by the company you keep. And I didn't think what was happening was kosher. So I chose to not compromise and not sell out my principles. And I up and left, and I returned to the practice of law.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, because we always have to bring a bat. That's why I talk about it. I use it as a metaphor, but it's also, that's where, bringing an awesome thought is also really important about bringing the bat. It's those awesome thoughts. And I'm sure that, part of that is what brings you peace and love. What are some of the things that bring you peace and love, or share an awesome thought for us today?
Yeah. So, for starters, my peace and love flows from my exercise. That kind of sets the table. So when I exercise, again, I show up better. I'm in a better position to not only give peace and love, but receive it. So I find that in service. I am a service-oriented person, and this really started when I was a kid. I was a paper boy, and I was in service to the community. And I did write a piece on this, and I learned in doing a little research on that piece that the U.S. Postal Service in the 50s actually had a stamp honoring newspaper boys, air quotes, newspaper boys, which was kind of funny. I try to my level best to write pieces that lift people up, not tear them down. I like to lead by example in word and deed. I try to appreciate beauty in whatever form it takes. And I'll give you, for instance, my daughters have danced, and I go to all their recitals, and I have some friends that have, ribbed me about that, saying, boy, that must be awful. And I say, no way. You wouldn't believe how talented some of these kids are. A, how much work they put in. B, and how much courage they have for getting up in front of, hundreds of people and dancing. So no, don't pity me for going to this dance recital. This is pretty cool. So I try to appreciate beauty in whatever form it takes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had daughters that also did dance as well as swimming, who are not, they're in the late heats. So you're sitting there the whole time. But there's that opportunity, again, to just appreciate where you're at and showing your kids whatever support. So if your kid's not the best at anything, but still showing up, it really does impact who's there. They know who's there and really shows up for them.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I played sports as a kid, and my folks were at the games, and they were sitting there quietly. I'd look up, they were there. Game was over. I'd look up, they'd be gone. But I knew they were there. And I'd get home that night. Sometimes we talk about it, other times we wouldn't, but I knew they were there. So I've always tried to show up for whatever events my daughters have been in. That was one of the blessings of the profession, frankly, of practicing law. It gave me that flexibility, where I was not working a lathe in a factory where I couldn't leave. So I was blessed in that regard. I could peel off at 2:00 or 3 p.m. on a school day and see something. You make it up on the other end, but who cares? Those moments are fleeting.
Well, it's finding that balance. That's why when I've been using, I like using the bat metaphor because when you're swinging, you can still swing and hit the ball off balance. But when you really hit that sweet spot, you really do. You're balanced. Everything's in flow in the nice way that we were talking about, flow in our internal flow and external flow. So there's a lot of that we have to do to make it work. And so what?
Yeah, no. And again, if, we've learned a lot in the last 2 years, again, things can turn on a dime. It's been a tumultuous time for everybody. And, kudos to those that were able to find the balance during this, again, very tumultuous time. And there were, and there still are a lot of people in distress because of it. So I think we need to be ever more mindful of helping others that need a hand. We cannot. Now's not the time to turn a blind eye to these folks. People are in distress, and I think we're duty bound to help them somehow.
Yeah, well, that's one of the quotes I use over and over again about Muhammad Ali. Right, the price we pay for living on this planet is the service we do for others, and that you definitely fit into that by all the things that you do. You've given us a lot of things to think about, but I'd like to ask you, I like talking about the seeds or metaphors. Do you have one specific metaphor you like to use?
Yeah, I think humble more and preen less. Humble more and preen less. I think humility is a tremendous currency, and I try to impress upon my daughters that if they traffic with humility as currency, it'll take them far. And preen less. I mean, you don't need to be a turkey showing your feathers. And I think there's so much preening in social media, and I think that presents a faux take on a lot of things in life. It seems to be a never-ending battle of one-upsmanship Like I need to show you how glamorous my life is, even though it may be fake. Like I'm not interested in preening. So I think if we humble more and preen less, I think we'll be better off as a society.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that was one of the lessons I learned through my challenges. Is when growing up, I was kid ego, as I've mentioned on the show, and when I tried to hurt myself, that's the part that by humbling myself, by telling people my story, because I want them to look at it and that you can move forward past almost anything you get through. But the ego, you have to lose your ego to do that.
Oh, without a doubt. And my freshman year in college, I walked on and tried out for a Division I baseball team, and I was full on Jagger swagger, and I got knocked back, into last month. The guys that were on that team, the guys that were the tryout, were exponentially better than me, and that was a very humbling experience. And again, I was a kid. And I thought, well, this won't be such a big deal. It was the ego, right. and I did not at that time. I hadn't fully developed the humility thing, but it brought me down a few notches, and I learned a lot from that. And I've had other experiences like that. So I try to spread that gospel that it's just humility is a helpful thing. It's a useful tool.
Yeah, very, very useful, because it again puts us back into that perspective and understanding that it's not all about us. It's about service to others, and I know you're a big servant leader in life.
It's important because if people aren't donating their time, among other things, then things are just simply not going to get done. The hospital where I spent some time working, the volunteer hours were through the roof. The monetary value of that was staggering. And what would these not-for-profits, what would these hospitals do without volunteers to push wheelchairs or to greet, things of that nature? It's a really necessary part of our society, and it's good that we have people that are willing to do it.
Yeah, and that's the magic part, and that's why I enjoy talking about charity work, because through my travels, I met Frank Shankowitz, and one of his things is when he was young, they said, well, do you know how to paint a fence? Everybody could do something, and that's the thing, is you could do, if you think that nickel for collecting a can for, I support pink cans for cancer, that nickel, yeah, it's not going to change the world, but that nickel might put the organization over the top to help somebody. That organization specifically helps people through surgeries and helps families through funerals and so much more. You don't know where that collective, and that's what it really is talking about, is that collective, being together and learning how we can all hold hands or grab somebody's hand to lift them up, not to knock them down.
Yeah. A few years back, the firm I was with, we did Habitat for Humanity. And again, that knocked me on my heels. What we accomplished on a given Saturday was absolutely mind-boggling. To see this house take shape. Again, I'm not that handy. That particular day, I volunteered to drive a pickup truck and pick up appliances and take them to the various houses. I had a ball doing that. I don't know if it was Lowe's or Home Depot donated appliances. I got the pickup truck. I went with a friend. We picked them up, and we would drop units at the various houses. So I know how to drive, and I know how to lift heavy things, and we made it happen. And, others were at the house hammering nails, painting, doing whatever. And at the end of the day, it was really amazing. It was just very cool.
Well, that's the great thing about being in a community, and I'm so glad that you and I met in this legal, wellness. Again, when I was in the law firms, the talk of mental wellness or any sort of wellness was, you wouldn't do that. It'll affect your billable hours. It'll affect so much more. And now I was so encouraged by seeing that conference that we met at.
Oh, without a doubt. And I'm grateful that a massively bright light is being shined upon this, because it's important for all the stakeholders. And again, that's not unique to the legal profession, but that's the one that we've been involved in. It's a stressful profession, and I think the firms and others need to recognize some of the issues, because the ostrich thing really doesn't work. And, there are ramifications from that. And, there's a domino effect. Again, we are in service to others. If you think about all the groups that we're in service to, and if we're offline, there's a domino effect. We can't show up and be in service. That's why, self-care is not a selfish thing. It's you do get obviously personal benefits, but I think it's a gift to others that when you take care of yourself, you then are in better shape to show up for others. So it's really, there's some duality there. I don't see it as a selfish act.
No. And if you need to feel that it's a selfish act, then that's okay, because you have to start with yourself. That's really is if you are in the best shape possible, then you can help others that much more effectively.
Correct. 100%. Yeah. I can't agree with you more.
Okay. Now, so how can everybody contact you? We'd love to give you that opportunity.
Sure. The website is carlficks.com, CarlFicks.com. And easy to remember. And that's where I am. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter when my younger daughter helps me get on Twitter. And Instagram.
I hear you. I have it all on one phone, so I just rip them all out at the time with messages.
Yeah, but I'll connect with anyone on LinkedIn. I do a post every Friday called the Friday Fix, where I try to offer just a little nugget of perhaps wisdom or something that may help somebody get through their week. I kind of share personal anecdotes. Some of them are self-deprecating things that happen to me, and I try to tease out a lesson that might be helpful to others. So I do that every Friday, and then I have a newspaper column twice a month, same title, Friday Fix.
Okay, and would you like to leave one more gem? I mean, you've really, can't wait to hear this again, because there were so many gems throughout there, or a seed that we can let plant, and everybody could let it grow in their own garden at their own speed. Yeah,
I'd say forgive more and grudge less.
Definitely.
In my younger days, again, I could hold a grudge as good as anybody else, but I realized that doesn't get you anywhere. And everybody's got a lot on their plate. So we need to be more forgiving to others, because you absolutely categorically do not know what's going on in somebody's life by simply looking at them. And so we need to be a little more forgiving. It's been a really tough 2 years. There's a lot going on in the world today with, Ukraine and food insecurity and race divisions and all of those things. The list goes on, but people are in distress. So I think we need to be more forgiving and then drop the grudges, because they don't serve any useful purpose. So forgive more, grudge less.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. And
thank you, David.
And for everybody,
I really appreciate it.
Me too. I love the conversations. We'll just have to continue this, not only on this episode, but maybe future episodes, but also just personally. And for everybody else,
Agreed.
We're just going to wish you peace and love as always. And when you bring in a bat, bring in an awesome thought. So hit your sweet spot, and hopefully you knock it out of the park. Have a great day. Thank you. I'm really glad that you're enjoying our show. Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat is brought to you by Launchpad 516 Studios. Executive produced by David Chemetsky and George Andriopoulos. Music selections by James Grant, Zach Nelson, and James Gaither, and licensed through Storyblock. Sound effects and sponsorship music licensed through Epidemic Sound. Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat is hosted with Podbean. Subscribe to our show wherever podcasts are available. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and share with all of your friends. Follow us on Facebook at Peace, Love, and Bring It Back. Follow me, Uncle Dave Shemetsky, on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Clubhouse. You can find all those links and more info at davidshemetsky.com. For show ideas, feedback, guest inquiries, or just a chat, reach out to me at peacelovebringabat@gmail.com. For sponsorship and media inquiries, reach out to peacelovebringabat@lp516.com. Make sure to follow all the great podcasts produced by Launchpad 516 Studios. Today's journey has come to a close, my friends. I hope the seeds of peace and love continue to grow for each one of you. Remember that peace and love surrounds you and will assist you to rise again. But don't forget to bring it back for what you believe in. Namaste.